Sarah, thank you so much. I want to bring in CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams and political commentator Alice Stewart. Good to see both of your faces here tonight. And I got to tell you, Elliot, as you know, the DOJ, you're formerly with DOJ, they're stepping up their investigations. You've got the raid of a former DOJ official who wanted to be the Attorney General, and we heard testimony as to why they did not think he should be. You heard about the seized electronics from a former attorney, John Eastman. Now they're honing in on the fake elector scheme in 7 battleground states. That's a lot of ground to cover. Which case, in your mind, stands out to you the most as potentially the most significant legally?
Laura, they're all significant legally, and the amazing thing about this is that this is how cases are built. And, it's easy to forget that 800 people or so have been charged with crimes here. But the way it works is that, and this was in Sarah's piece, there's violence, there's unrest, something happens, it gets investigated by the Justice Department. They start talking to those people, bringing them in, getting some to cooperate, and moving not just up the chain, but almost around the jungle gym, so to speak. And so you end up around the country in states like Michigan and Arizona. So it's hard to say that there's any one that is the alarming one, other than the fact that they all suggest a lack of faith in institutions in America and led to people acting out.
Well, speaking of that, in terms of alarm, Alice, I wonder what your perspective is, because you've got some subpoenas calling for prominent Republicans, as Sarah indicated, who are connected to the fake elector scheme, required to provide documents by tomorrow. Do you have some pause or cause for concern about these officials that may be cooperating? Is this the price that's being paid right now, and will it be long-lasting?
Look, the fake elector scheme is ridiculous, and it should have never been bought into by anyone. And I'm pleased to hear news that the DOJ is actually looking into that as well, and we'll be interested to see if they take action. I think it's really incumbent upon Republicans moving forward is to work and comply with this hearing and everything we can find out about January 6th, and put the fake elector scheme behind us and do everything we can to put integrity back in the election process. And look, at what I do want to touch on Pat Cipollone's testimony tomorrow. I've worked with him before. He is a straight shooter. He is someone that in the midst of a storm, he is the calm in the midst of a storm. And also when there is chaos and there's difficulty going on, he is the person that will go right to the principal and give them the difficult, hard, straight truth about the proper course of action. That's exactly what he did here with regard to encouraging Donald Trump not to go back to the Capitol, saying that that would spur up many criminal charges. He did not do so. So the intent to overthrow the election and cause chaos is much different than actually following through, which he did not do. Look, Donald Trump took a lot of bad legal advice on January 6th, but it does not appear any of it was from Pat Cipollone.
Well, Cipollone, if he is the calm in the storm, it's a hell of a storm, Alice, in terms of what was actually brewing that day. And just stick with you on this very point, why do you think, if that's the case, if he is this steady hand, why did he not come forward until after Cassidy Hutchinson to provide testimony? What do you think was the basis for that? I know you can't get into his mind fully, but why do you think there's been the delay?
Well, clearly he has provided some information and has answered some question. Clearly, you two are the smart attorneys. You understand that the concerns about attorney-client privilege and what is privileged information, what he can and cannot put forth. But he also understands that he is not Donald Trump's private attorney. He is there for, counsel for the presidency as a whole, and he clearly is doing the right thing, I think, and coming forth and providing additional information. I think it is wrong for anyone to assume he's going to provide anything different than what he has said in the past. He will continue to acknowledge the information and the advice and counsel he gave to the president. And if nothing else, I think it will corroborate some of the testimony we heard from Cassidy Hutchinson. But I don't think we'll see a smoking gun tomorrow.
Elliot, what do you think? Go ahead.
It's one thing, though, and Alice raises a really important point with this attorney-client privilege and executive privilege point, which was largely the reason why Pat Cipollone hadn't testified before and why many others in the White House haven't. But it's sort of a way that folks tend to hide from coming in and testifying. Take, for example, a statement that he is reported to have said that he thought the fake electors scheme was, and I quote, kooky, was, I think, the word that he'd used. There is no universe.
Or a murder-suicide pact.
Murder-suicide Suicide pact. There is literally no universe, Laura, you know this as well as I, in which that would be protected by any sort of privilege. There's no universe in which if we do this, we're all going to be charged with crimes, said to another colleague who's not the president. He's essentially, speaking, so there's any number of meetings, conversations that he would have been a part of that aren't going to be protected by privilege. And we've seen this time and again where folks, merely on account of having a law degree, think that and working in the White House, thinks that they never have to come in and testify or provide truthful information to Congress, and that's just it's a convenient excuse. I don't want to impute motives to anybody, but at the end of the day, there's plenty of information that he could and should provide, and I hope he does tomorrow.
Well, I remind people, if you're talking about any presidential privileges, there is a president of the United States right now. His name is President Joe Biden, and he has said, hey, speak away. If you're talking about the office of the White House counsel, whose job it is to protect the institution of the presidency, go ahead and speak out on this issue. But for both of you, I am curious about this. Call it the lawyer in me who is a bit champing at the bit to have him explain specifically what exactly were the crimes you thought you'd be charged with if you were to go to January 6th. And I want to line them up against the things that you've heard referenced by and intimated by the likes of Congresswoman Liz Cheney. And to you on this point, Alice, I'm wondering how you think this is all landing among the electorate, perhaps more broadly, but more specifically, the Republican electorate in particular, because before the actual hearings commenced, just the amount of time it took to get a lot of these hearings to start in the first instance showed the impatience, justifiably, of the American people. What do you think and make of how these are going so far among Republican voters?
Look, I've listened to every bit of the hearings and the testimony. I think it's pretty damning, and I think it does show a president that is unhinged and certainly, uncertain about the course of action to do, because he is clearly in denial of the fact that he lost the election. But I've also spoken with many Republicans who supported the former president and buy into the election frauds nonsense, and did support the protests at the Capitol. And look, they're not moved by what they're hearing. Many of them aren't watching it, aren't paying attention to this. They're not looking at the 2020 election. What they are concerned with in terms of politically moving forward, they're focused on the economy and gas and bills and crime. Those are the issues they're concerned about looking forward. But there are many people that are undecided and independents who are watching this and are taking a look at this. And I think the testimony has moved the needle for those people, and they are really turned off by the actions of the former president.
Well, Alice, on that point, and can our team bring up, there's a Quinnipiac poll to that point you just referenced. And the Quinnipiac polling taken before, say, Hutchinson's testimony, just to give a reference point, it showed that 36% of people have learned new information from the hearings, while 62% have not learned new information. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you think about this, Elliot in particular, if you're presenting a kind of a case, this is not a criminal proceeding. Let's just reiterate that till we're blue in the face. Congress is not the prosecutor. They are not DOJ. They are an entirely separate branch of government. Remember our civics lessons here. But if you're presenting a case to the court of, say, electoral opinion, Elliot, do you think that Cipollone's testimony or the remaining witnesses, whoever they may be, is going to be persuasive? I mean, if you're not learning anything new, does that mean that this is an exercise in futility for many voters?
No, number one, you're making me want to sing Three-Ring Circus from Schoolhouse Rock about the three different branches of government.
I'm just a bill. If we go with I'm just a bill, I'm going to chime in right now. Are you kidding me? We just dated ourselves.
We just did. We're doing the deep cuts here, Laura. But with respect to the public opinion, at the end of the day, I don't want to say the public opinion doesn't matter, because it does. It's a political process. But public opinion doesn't determine whether the Justice Department brings charges. And at the end of the day, if Congress makes a persuasive case, they can present it to the Justice Department, but that's not, what the public thinks isn't going to factor into the decision. Now, look, if the Justice Department brings charges and the public doesn't like it, then Merrick Garland is going to have to do a bunch of press conferences and answer questions from reporters, but that doesn't change the underlying decision to move forward with charging. I think we're blurring in this national conversation these two things together: what the public thinks and what is legally correct or accurate. And and they fit together. There's some harmony to it, but at the end of the day, if the facts and law support charges, the Justice Department should go ahead.
Thank you to you both. I just want to say I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're having some breaking news tonight out of Japan. The former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been rushed to a hospital after a possible shooting. That's according to NHK. Stay with us.